Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Poetry 1, course code 403, lecture 3. In lecture 2 we discussed 14th century, the background, the social, political, religious and literary background of the 14th century. We discussed the background that before the 14th century there was some very important political incident, that was the Norman conquest in 1066, and after that there was the French literature was produced in the English court, and French language was used all over the country for all the serious purposes. It was used for leading legal proceedings, it was used for in the schools for educational purposes. The important after that, after 1250, there was a kind of rise of the feelings of there was a kind of rise of patriotic feelings among the English people. They thought that they are an independent nation, they should use their own language, they should develop, they should flourish their own language. In the case of social aspect, we have got Black Death. Black Death caused the wiping out of 1/3 of the population. So this basically resulted in the importance of labor, in the importance of the lower classes. So ultimately, these people, they demanded more money, and their living standard was increased. Religiously, because of the rivalry of French and English, the connection of the church had been weakened. The authority of Pope, it decreased. So moreover, the church in France, it became corrupt, and that corruption prevailed in the whole society. Talking about the literary aspect, as we discussed that in the case of literature, it was French that dominated, and there were very few, or probably there were no notable works in the case of English literature. Before this, okay, we have some important writers of the age: William Langland, John Gower, Wycliffe, Mandeville and Chaucer. They had written about different themes, and some of them they translated works from other languages into English. Chaucer's contribution is a significant one out of all these poets because of a number of reasons. He is considered to be the representative poet of the 14th century because of his work. He introduced realism into English literature, because before that there was no reality. There were miracle and morality plays, and all the themes of literature, whatever literature was produced, the themes were religious. They were based on religious stories, on different religious inscriptions. He is the pioneer. Geoffrey Chaucer is the pioneer. He introduced heroic couplet. He is the pioneer of writing in vulgar English. Now here, vulgar English refers to the language, it's not abusive language. Vulgar English refers to the language used by the ordinary people, by the language used in the streets. So he is the first writer who started writing English language as it was used in the society by the ordinary people. So this is something very important, and for this reason he is considered to be not only the father of English poetry, because of the introduction of heroic couplet and his realism into the English literature. Critics consider him father of English poetry, but some critics, they regard him as the father of English language also, because he depicted the language as it was used in the society. Then we had a little introduction of Chaucer's biography. We talked about his birth, that he was born in London in 1340. After that we talked about his connection to the court, that he was appointed as a yeoman probably at the age of 17. Later on he had certain travels abroad, he had certain missions abroad. He traveled to France, Italy. So from there he got inspiration for some of his very important works. So his literary career can be divided into 3 phases: the French period, the Italian period and the English period. In the French period, he was inspired by Guillaume's work, Roman de la Rose, and he translated that work also. Later on he took inspiration from Dante, Boccaccio and Petrarch's works. After this, probably towards the 80s, towards the 1385 and after those years, Chaucer developed himself as an individual writer. He took inspiration for his works. He read all those works of French and Italian writers. He developed himself as an individual writer. He was not copying those writers. So the third period of his literary career is very significant, that he started writing, he was writing in English language, and that work is known as the English period, because he had developed himself as an individual writer. We talked about Chaucer's language. There are differences, because his language was 600 years old, and language keeps on changing. Languages do not stand still. So there are changes in the pronunciation, in spellings, in the grammatical usage, and sometimes there are differences in the meanings and vocabulary items also. Next, we had the introduction to the Canterbury Tales, because in this course, the prologue to the Canterbury Tales is included. So the framework of the Canterbury Tales is a pilgrimage. So under that, Chaucer had collected the narrators from a diverse assembly. Now these narrators, they belong to all the stratas of the society. They belong to the feudal class, to the working class, to the laborers. So they belong to all the classes of the society. They represented all the classes of the society. So it is a genius idea to combine the stories of all these people under one framework. He introduced heroic couplet, and this the Canterbury Tales is written in heroic couplet, and the language is Middle English. It is a collection of stories narrated by 30 pilgrims who aim to go to the shrine of Thomas A. Becket in Canterbury. And these 30 pilgrims, each will tell 4 stories, 2 on the way going to the Canterbury and 2 on the way back to Canterbury. And so originally the plan was of 120 stories, but Chaucer could not complete 120 stories. There are 24 stories. Out of these, 2 stories are incomplete. A little recap of heroic couplet. We talked about the heroic couplet, that Chaucer introduced the heroic couplet. What is heroic couplet? A pair of rhyming lines written in iambic pentameter. Now what is iambic? Iambic refers to the foot used. And what is foot? Foot is the syllable. The group of syllables are called feet. And there are basically, this is a pair of syllables. And pentameter refers to 5 feet. So a pair of lines that rhyme together having 10 syllables, or in other words we can say 5 feet, the first unstressed and the second stressed syllable. We have one example here. Befell that in that sea, sun on a day, in Southwark at the tabard as I lay. Now in these, if you look at the last 2 words of both the lines, day and lay, now day and lay, they rhyme together. So these 2 lines, they rhyme. Moreover, there are 5 feet in these lines. And these red lines, they mark the division of a foot. The prologue to the Canterbury Tales. Now the prologue, it gives an introduction. It gives the general plan of what Chaucer is going to talk about. So it gives individual portraits of characters, individualized portraits of characters, and it also, those are not only the individualized portraits, they are social types also. So it's both at the same time. They are individuals and they are social types. He did not follow any particular order for telling the description of these characters or for giving them turn for narrating the story. He has started it with the knight, probably because he is somebody who has a higher social rank in the society. Now the layout of the prologue is very simple. has 858 lines, and all these have got the lines from first 34 lines, the lines 1 to 34. They give an elaborate introduction about the season, about the intention, that what these people are going to do and where are they going. So it gives an introduction, a complete description of the scene, the season, everything. Then from lines 35 to 719, it gives a series of portraits. It tells, it gives the description of different characters, that who are these pilgrims, what are their names, how are they dressed, what are their ambitions, or what are their achievements, the armaments. So all these things, he has given vivid descriptions of his pilgrims. Line 720 to 821, it is the host's suggestion of a storytelling competition and its acceptance. So suggests that in order to pass time, it is good to tell a story. So it was decided, and everybody, all the pilgrims, they agreed upon this proposal, that every pilgrim is going to tell 2 stories on the way going to the shrine and 2 on the way back to home. Lines 822 to 858, the last lines or the concluding lines, they describe that the next morning the pilgrims assemble, and it is decided the knight shall tell the first tale. So this is the plan, this is the layout of the prologue. So now we begin with the text of the journal prologue to the Canterbury Tales. There is a glossary given, because this glossary would indicate the words that we use now. They have changed a little, so there is a little change in the shape of words. Sometimes only the letters of alphabets are different, but the words, they resemble somewhat to their modern forms. So we'll see that in this analysis. When that April with his showers suited. Now see, when, this is when, the modern English WHEN, when, that April is the name of the month, so it's April with his showers. Now here his is highlighted. Why? Because his is referring to the month, of the year, which is not a living thing. So he has personified the month of the year. So this is the first figure of speech he is using here. So his showers suited. Now see, shower is the same, but the spellings are a little different. The drought of March hath pierced to the root. Now see, March, again the name of the month, hath means has, pierced, here it's pierced, to the root, that the dryness of the month of March has reached the very roots of the plants, and bathed every vine in swish liquor. Swish is such, and liquor is the moisture, and of which virtue engendered is the flower. Now flower, the spellings are a bit different. It's the modern equivalent of FLOWER, flower. When Zephyrus eke with his sweet breath. Zephyrus, it's a reference here, it's an allusion to the west wind, which is generally associated to the spring season. So it says that when April begins, he describes with the description of the season that it is the April, and in April, it with all its sweet showers, the month of April has bathed, has brought moisture in everything. Even where the month of March has brought the dryness even to the roots of the plants. And it has created, it has given a new energy to the flowers. When Zephyrus eke with his sweet breath. Now it rhymes with the next line, inspired hath in every holt and heath. So that west wind, it breathes, it it blows, and with this sweet breeze it has inspired the heats, and everywhere around it has even inspired the tender crops, the branches of the trees, and the young sun. Now here he calls the sun as young. He has explained that hath in the ram his half course run. Now ram is the first zodiac sign, and he says that the sun has run half of its course, so it's still young. So this young sun that has run half of its course of ram is still young, and small fowls make a melody, and the small birds, fowls refers to, in this male it is small, fowls are the birds, and make a melody, they are singing songs. That in the month of April it's the spring season, and the small birds, they have everything, because of the month of the April, everything has got moisture, it's free, it has got energy, even the flowers have got energy. The west wind, it has inspired energy in everything. It has brought moisture and tenderness to the crops and to the young sun, and the flower and the small birds are singing songs that slepen all the night with eye open, yea. Now slepen is sleep, night is the modern English equivalent night, with open, yea refers to the eye. So he says that even the small birds, they are singing songs that sleep in the night with the one eye open. If we look at the rhyme scheme of these lines, sute and rute, the first two lines, they rhyme together, then breathe and heed, and sonne and rone, and then melody and yea. So all these pairs of lines, they rhyme together. So moreover, if we look at the lines also, these lines, they contain 10 syllables. So it's written in iambic pentameter. For example, that, sleigh, pen. Now see, 1, 2, 3, all the night, with open, yea. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. So there are 10 syllables in total. So prikatem, nature in her courages. Now prikat is stirs, it arouses, is them, her is their, courages is hearts. So the nature arouses their hearts, it motivates them, it encourages them. Then is then, longan is desire, folk, people, to goon is to go on pilgrims. So the nature encourages the hearts of people to go on, so that they desire to go on the pilgrimage. And palmers for to second strands to fun halves node in sundry lawns. Palmers are basically pilgrims. They are different from pilgrims in the sense that they carry the palm trees as the gifts. For the second is to seek. Strands, it refers to the foreign places. To fun halves refers to the holy places that are situated in the far off lands. Know is to known, in sundry lands, in various lands, in the far off places. So the nature encourages, it motivates, it arouses the hearts of the people to desire to go on a pilgrimage, and palmers to seek and to go to the strange lands and to see the holy places and to know about the various lands. And especially for every shrine's end, here it goes with the next line, of England to Canterbury they went. So every shrine's end, from England to the Canterbury, they started going. So went, basically here probably it is from the second form of the verb go, it's from went. The holy blissful martyr for to seek. This holy, it refers to holy. Blissful is the blessed by God. Martyr is the modern English martyr. Here it's just the difference of the spelling. For to seek. To seek is again the modern English equivalent, seek. So all these people, they intended to go to visit to the shrine of the martyrs for the sake of getting the blessings of God. That hem hath holpen when they were sick. Hem, again, them, they have, hath is have, holpen is helped when they were sick. Then when they sought to go to these places, they were helped. Befell that in that season on a day, befell means it happened, it occurred, it took place in a season, on a day, in Southwark at the Tabard Inn as I lay. In Southwark is the name of the, it's a place, Southwark, at the Tabard. Tabard is the name of the inn where these pilgrims, they were staying, and from where they had to start their journey. Ready to wenden on my pilgrimage to Canterbury with full devout courage. So these pilgrims, they were ready to leave to the Canterbury with full of with their hearts full of devotion for the saint. At night was come into the hostelry. Hostelry refers to the inn where they were staying. Well, 9 and 20 in a company. Now see, company, again, this is the modern English equivalent, company. 9 and 20, here it refers to 29. So there were 29 in the company, and definitely one is the host who was there. The host is talking, and with him there were 29 pilgrims who were to set off for this journey, for this pilgrimage on that morning. Of sundry folk by adventure ye fall. Now adventure, it refers to chance, and sundry folk, the different classes. He mentions that at night all these people, they had assembled in the inn, at the inn of Tabard where he was present, and all these 29 people, the company of the 29 people were ready to leave for the, they belong to the different classes, they were ready to leave for the pilgrimage. In fellowship, now this fellowship, again the modern English equivalent of fellowship. And pilgrims were they all, that toward Canterbury Walden ride. So all these pilgrims, they would ride towards the Canterbury in company. The chambers and the stables were wide. Chambers, it refers to the room, and wide is the space, it refers to the space. And well we were east at best. At best is at best. So they were given comforts. The maximum comforts were provided to these pilgrims. And shortly when the sun was to rest, when the sun was about to set, they were given maximum comfort so that they can take rest, and they can start their journey in the next morning. When the sun was to rest, when the sun sets, some people believe that it is resting. It is the rest time for the sun also. And had I spoken with them, Avrishon, that I was of her fellowship, anon. Now Avrishon refers to everyone. With him is them. So that I was of her is their fellowship, that I was also. So the host says that I spoke to them, I spoke to each one of them as I was their fellow companion, and made forward early for to rise. And they all agreed to rise early, to take our way there as I your device. And he said that he proposed that, he suggested that they should get up early in the morning so that they could start their journey as he had mentioned it earlier. He says that as I have mentioned to you earlier. So as he had mentioned earlier, for the from the Tabard Inn to the Canterbury, they had to start their journey. So he suggested that if they go to their beds early, it would be good for them to start their journey in the morning. So from in these lines we had these were from lines 1 to 34. We had introduction of the Caesar. We had the introduction of what he is going to talk about. Basically he started off with the description of the spring season. He gave an allusion also that spring season basically is associated with warmth, with excitement, with energy, with the spirit to do something. So those feelings of lethargy and decay, they all vanished with the arrival of the spring season. And the Zephyrus, the west wind, that also played a very important role to inculcate and to bring strength and power and energy to everything present in the nature, and that same energy was reflected in the people also, so that they were all ready to go for the pilgrim. So it is a source of excitement also, and later on it's not only, all these things are not only evident in the nature, these are very much reflected in the attitude of human beings also, that they have taken upon this journey, they have undertaken this journey, they are ready to leave, and they have assembled at the Tabard Inn, and they have gone for the rest so that they could start their journey the next morning early. But Netherlands, while I have time and space, Netherlands is nonetheless. So he says that while he has got time, he has got space, ere that I further in this tale pace, so till the time that there is some time to tell the tales, to tell the story that he had suggested, me thinketh it according to reason. So he says that it is reasonable to, he thinks that me is I, thinketh is think. So he thinks that, he says that I think it is reasonable to, he thinks that it was reasonable to tell you all the condition. So this is the modern English equivalent, condition, condition. So this is the same modern English equivalent, condition. Yo is you, to tell is tell, tell. So al is all, modern English equivalent all, all. So he says that till the time there is since if all the pilgrims, they have gone to take some rest, and they are going to start their journey the next morning, and when they will start the journey, they will start telling the tales. So he says that by that time I have time and I have got space also. He says that it is reasonable for me to talk about certain things, to talk about certain conditions of each of M is them. He says that it is reasonable to talk about something, and what is that? To talk about each of them. Now he is going to describe these characters, these pilgrims, so as it seemed me. He says that I am going to describe them, I am going to give their description the way they appeared to me, and which they weren't, and of what degree, that whatever they wore, whatever they were, they for example, whatever the social class they belonged to, or whatever they were, their name, and of what degree, that for example, if there was a knight of, or if there was somebody belonging to the church, to what degree that person was perfect, and eke in what array is the dress, and that eke is everyone, that how everyone is dressed that they were in. So when at the time when they were present at the Tabard Inn to leave for the pilgrimage, how were they dressed? And at a night, then will I first begin. At a night means with the description of the night, then will I first begin. Begin is the begin. So till here he describes that since all these pilgrims, they have gone to take rest so that they could start their journey early the next morning. He says that by that time I could describe you all these pilgrims, how they looked, who they were, what they wore, and he will begin with the description of the knight, because he was having a higher social rank. A knight there was, and that a worthy man. So he says that there was a knight and he was a worthy man, he was a capable man, that from the time that he first began, that from the time, fro is from, time is the modern English equivalent of time, and he first began to widen out, he loved chivalry. Now chivalry, this was something very common in the, this was basically glory in the deeds of bravery and adventure. The knights were always ready to help the needy, the poor. They were always in the search of some adventure so that they can help some children or women or the older peoples or anybody in the society who was in the need of help. So knights, they were always in search of, they were always in quest of certain adventures so that they can help people. So this all brought fame, it all brought glory to their career. So he loved chivalry. Since the time he started riding to different places, he loved chivalry, truth and honor. So these were his characteristics. He loved chivalry, he always spoke the truth and honor, freedom and courtesy. He loved freedom and he loved courtesy because he was always in the search of different adventures, and he loved refinement. Full worthy was he in his Lord's war. Now Lord's war is the wars that were fought by his lords. So he was worthy, that he fought very well, he did very well, those wars, they brought glory to him, and he fought well in the wars that were fought by his overlords, that were fought by his feudal lords. And there too had he ridden, no man fur. And he had ridden to the places where nobody even would have gone, to such places, as well in Christendom as in heathenies, that neither in Christianity not in heathens, nobody would ever have traveled so much as this knight had done, and ever honored for his worthiness, and nobody was ever honored the way he was honored. He was given respect for his capability, for his glory as a soldier. He had been to Alexandria. At Alexander he was when it was won. So when that battle was won at Alexander, he was present there. Full of time he had the board begun. So at many occasions he headed the board. He was the in charge. He was the person commanding the battalion. He was the one who was ruling. He was heading the board. He, above in all nations in Prus, he had been to Prussia. In Leto had he raised, and in Rus, and he had been to Lithuania, he had been to Russia. No Christian man so oft of his degree. So nobody could ever parallel his achievement. So here in these lines, the poet describes his achievements, that he had been to Alexandria, he had been to Prussia, he had been to Lithuania, he had been to Russia. So no Christian man could parallel his achievements. In Grenade, at the siege eke hade he be of Aljazair and Redon Belmire. At Lies was he, and at Stellia when they were won, and in the great sea at many a noble army had he be. He was in Granada when it was attacked. He was in Aljazair. He had ridden to Ben Marine. He had even been to Lias and Atalia. He had been with many noble armies at different places when these battles were won. At mortal battles had he been 15, and fought for our faith at Tramesine. In lists thrice, and slain his foe. This ilk worthy knight had been also sometime with the Lord of Pelit, again another heathen in Turkey. Now again it continues with his achievements, that he had been to the mortal battles 15 times, and he had fought for the faith of the Tramesin, and his lists are long. The list of the enemies whom he had slain, he had killed the people. So he was a worthy knight who had fought for his lords at different occasions, and he had brought honor to them, and he had been in Turkey also. At other occasion he had been in Turkey as well. He had been in Anatolia, in Turkey, and he had fought against the enemies, and he had killed a large number of them. And even more, he had a sovereign praise. And though he were worthy, he was wise, and of his port as meek as is a maid. He never yet no villainy, nay said, in all his life unto no manner white. So he was a worthy man. He was a capable man whose list of achievements is very long, and he had made visits to a number of places. He had been to different places, and he was victorious. He was successful in all these places. And though even after all these accomplishments, he never said ill of anything. He never said anything that was not fit for his speech, that was not appropriate according to his higher social status. So he was this kind of person all his life, that he never spoke. Even with all these achievements, he never said something ill that did not fit his higher status in the society. So these are the concluding remarks about the knight. He was a very perfect, gentle knight. Very is the modern English equivalent for very. Perfect is the perfect. Gentle knight. He was very kind and gentle. He was a noble man. But for to tell you of his array. Now, so far he has discussed his achievements, that the kinds of works that he had done for his lords in different wars. He had been to different places all over the world. Now he tells that, but of his array. Array is the dress. Now he says that I will tell you about his dress. His horse was good. But he was not gay. He was not gay means bright, that the equipment, the weaponry that he had, the weapons that he had, or the dress that he was wearing, it was not at all bright. Of fustian he wore a jippon. Now see, fustian it refers to the rough cloth fabric. So the dress that he was wearing, it was a very rough fabric. He wore a jippon. Jippon is a short waistcoat. For he was late come from his voyage. So voyage is the voyage, modern English equivalent for voyage. Of fustian he wore a jippon. So he was wearing a jippon. He was wearing a short waistcoat, all besmarted with his habergeon. Now say habergeon is an iron. He was all his clothes, they were muddy because he had come from one of his voyages recently, and he had come in the same condition. He had come for the pilgrimage and went for to do his pilgrimage, and he has come there. He has come to do his pilgrimage. Doon is to do his pilgrimage. So this is the summary from lines 35 to 78. That first the host declared that he is going to describe the pilgrims, and he mentioned that he will begin with the description of the knight. He described the knight as a person, as a character, and then his achievements, that he had been to different far off lands. And now after that he described a bit of his dressing, that his dressing it is of a very rough fabric. It is not very fine, but his horse was in good condition, and his armaments also, that they are all muddy, they are not new, they are not bright. Next we have the knight's son. With him there was his son, a young squire. So a young squire was also there with him. He was his son, a lover and a lusty bachelor. A lover and a lusty bachelor. Now lusty bachelor here, it refers to somebody who has just begun the career. So the squire has joined the company. He has joined the company of his father. And he intends to do the way his father has set a model. With locks curl as they were laid in press. Locks, now see, these locks are the locks of the hair. Curl, that they are in curls as they were laid in press, as if his hair, they have locks as if they are just pressed. Of 20 years of age he was, I guess. The host says that he appears to be, it is his guess that he appears to be of 20 years of age. Of his stature he was of even length. Even means average, length is height. So his height, to him, to the host, this squire, the young man, his physique, he had the average height. And wonderfully deliver and of great strength. So deliver refers to the active, the energy of the youth, and of great strength. Strength refers to the power. So he was very active and he was very strong also. And he had been sometime in Shivaji. Now sometime is the modern English equivalent for sometime. And he had been in journeys, in different journeys, in Flanders, in Estroy, in Picardy, and borne him weal, and all these they had brought him success as of so little space, in hope to standen in his lady grace. So he was hopeful. He had made some visits also so far to Flanders and Artois. These are the province, and Picardy also. These are the provinces in the northern France. He had made some visits to different lands. He had made those journeys as a trainee of knighthood, because he wanted to excel in the deeds of bravery and strength. Embroidered was he as it were a mead. Now here it is the description of his dress, that he was wearing embroidered dress, and there was such a kind of embroidery that it appeared like a garden, it appeared like a meadow, all full of fresh flowers. A meadow which is full of fresh flowers. Now the flowers are of different colors. So from this we can understand his the gay nature of the bright nature of the squire, that he was wearing the dress which was as colorful as a garden, white and red. Now here this red would be read as reed. It were a mead and white and reed. Now white and reed, they were as if that garden was full of white and red flowers. Sanguine he was and floating all the day. Sanguine is the red color. It refers to the complexion of the person, that he was healthy. It refers to his health, that he was a healthy young man, and he was fluting all the day. He was roaming about, he was playing the flute. He was as fresh as is the month of May. So month of May is basically in the context where this poem is written, basically in London. It's not like Pakistan. In the month of May, it's spring season, the way we have February around here, because there it's all covered with snow in the months of February, March, and it's the beginning of the spring season during April, and it's spring season in May. So he was as fresh as it was the month of May. So he was fresh like the spring season, the way there is grass, flowers, colors everywhere, there is energy, youth. So all these things are symbolic. Short was his gown. His gown was short with sleeves long and wide. His gown was short, which had long wide sleeves, so this shows that he was wearing a fashionable dress. Well could he sit on horse and fair ride. He could ride, he could fairly, he could sit on the horse, and he knew how to sit on the horse and how to ride a horse. He could songs make and well endowed. Endowed means to write. He could sing songs, and he could also write these songs. So he was a poet as well. He used to write the poetry and he used to sing those songs. Just and eke dance and well portray and write. He could also dance in that, and he could write the poetry, and he could draw and he could write the poetry. So basically in Middle Ages, in medieval times, in Chaucer's times, the writing and singing and dancing, these were considered to be the accomplishments of a young man. So the squire had all these accomplishments, he had all these qualities. So Hoote, he loved that by night tale. Night tale is the night time. He sleep nay more than doth a nightingale. So he slept like a nightingale. Courteous he was, lowly and serviceable. Lowly is humble, serviceable, somebody who is ready to help others, somebody who is ready to do the hard work. So he was courteous. It describes his character qualities, that he was courteous, he was humble, and he was serviceable. He was ready to help the other people. And calf before his father at the table. And it was considered to be another accomplishment during Chaucer's time for a young man to be able to serve the people or the guests sitting at the table. So he served his father, he carved the serving at the table to his father and others also. So we have the description in the lines from 79 to lines 100. We have the squire's description. We come to know about him as a character, that what sort of a person he was. We come to know his achievements, that he had made some journeys also to some provinces of France, and we come to know about his dressing, that he is a very bright, energetic, active person, and he loves colors, and even the dress that he is wearing is very colorful and bright, and it is fashionable also, and his armaments as well. A yeoman had he and servants Nemo. And at that time for him Leicester right so, and he was clad in coat and hood of green. The yeoman was the only servant with the knight. He did not have any other servant, so he was riding with his son, the squire, and the yeoman, the only servant. He was wearing a coat and a green hood. C-O-T, this refers to the modern English C-O-A-T, coat. And he was wearing a green hood. A sheaf of peacock arrows, bright and keen. So he was having a bundle of peacock arrows that were bright and that was very sharp. Under his belt he bar full thriftily. So he carried them very carefully under his belt. Well could he dress his tackle yeomanly. So he was dressed very well according to the dress of a yeoman. His arrows dropped not with feathers low, and in his hand he bare a mighty bow. So he had a strong bow in his hand. He had a huge, big bow in his hand. So his arrows, they were lying in a position that the feathers were low. They were very little, and he was carrying a bow in his hand. A knot had he with a brown visage. Now not heat, it refers to the head with closely handled hair, that his hair, they were properly organized, and he had the brown features, he had the brownish color. Of woodcraft well could he all the usage, and he knew how to handle the woodwork, he knew all the woodwork as well. Upon his arm he bore a gay bracer. Upon his arm he was wearing a bright protector for the arms that usually soldiers and knights wear, and by his side a sword and a buckler. So he was having a, by his side he was having a sword and a small shield. So this is the these are the armaments of the yeoman that he was carrying. He knew how he was of brown color, so this is his complexion, that he had brown color, and his hair were properly organized, and he knew the woodwork. He was aware how to do that, and in his arm he was carrying a bracer, and on his side he was having a sword and a small shield, and on the other side a gay dagger, and on the other side, on one side he had the sword and a small shield, and on the other side he had a bright dagger. And why bright? Because it was very sharp, harnessed well and sharp as point of spear. It was this dagger, it was as sharp as the point of the spear. It was well decorated, and it was as sharp as a spear. A Christopher on his breast of silver sheen, and horn he bore. So there was the mark of, there was a sign, an image of Saint Christopher on his breast. It was shown very brightly, and on he bore the baldric was of green. So he was wearing a green belt also. A forester was he, soothly as I guess. Soothly is truly, guess is Guess, the modern English equivalent of guess. Forester is this refers to the forester. So the host, by describing him, he says that since he was aware of all this woodwork and all these things, and he knew how to do it, so he believes that he was probably a forester. So we had the description of the yeoman, that as what type of a person he was, as a character, that he was a very humble person. He was under the service of the knight, and he was wearing a simple dress that was according to a yeoman's dress, and his armaments are also there, and the host makes a guess that probably he is a forester, because he knew the woodwork as well. The next we have the description of a prioress. There was also a nun, a prioress. Nun is the nun in the church. That of her smiling was full simple and coy. This simple, this Y basically this stands for I in modern English. Simple. Smiling, again, if we replace Y with I, it would be the modern English equivalent word, smiling. So her smiling was very simple, and it was quiet. So she quietly smiled, and it was very simple. Her greatest oath was but by Saint Loy. So she had taken an oath on the on the name of the Saint Loy. Saint Loy was the saint in the 7th century, and after 3 years in Flanders, and after 3 years of his death, he was made the saint. And she was clept Madame Eglantine. Now Eglantine is the name of a flower. She is a prioress, and the clergy people belonging to the church, religious services, and Christianity, they are supposed to be simple as possible, so that they could concentrate on their religious preachings, their teaching and learning, and that process of teaching and preaching. If we look at this name Eglantine, her name was Eglantine, which is the name of a flower. So from this we can understand that he is how ironical it is that instead of being simple, even her very name is fashionable. It is after the name of a flower. Clept means called, so she was called Madame Eglantine. Her name was Eglantine. Full wheel she song the service divine. Full wheel, that she sang the services, the services of the church fully well, and tuned in her nose full seemly. Now she produced the voice out of her nose during those services. We can look at the styles that she adopts during those services. Now these services are the religious sermons, and she sang those services, and she delivered them as in such a manner as if she was singing a song. And fresh she spake full fair and fetisly. This is French, the modern English equivalent of French language. So she spoke, because this is a prerequisite for the clergymen, for the people belonging to the church, that they should know French language, they should be able to translate from French, they should fluently speak and understand French language. So she spoke French language fair and fetisly, that well and prettily. She could fluently speak it after the school of Stratford at Bow. So she spoke the French which was spoken in the town Stratford at Bow, but for French of Paris was to her unknown. Now look at this irony, that she was unfamiliar, she did not know anything of the standard French, and the clergy people, they are usually, so this is something ironical here, that when he says that, and French she spake full fair and fetisly, because she was speaking French which was substandard, which was not fit for religious purposes, for the services of the church. So she did not know any standard French, which was the Paris dialect. At meat well taught was she with all. At meat refers to the food. Well taught, that she was taught well, she knew the manners, she had a good upbringing. Was she with all, that with all the people she had the etiquette, she had the manners how to eat food. She let no morsel from her lips fall. So she let no morsel, no piece of bread to fall from her lips. Nay wet her fingers in her sauce deep. And she did not, even her fingers were not dipped in her sauce, in her the gravy that she had. So this is something indicative of her manners, that instead of concentrating on her duties that she is supposed to do, she is concerned with her, first of all, the first reference we had her name was Eglantine, which was very fashionable. Secondly, we came to know about the language that she spoke. It was not standard French, it was one of the dialect of standard French language, which was not fit for the services of the church. Now we come to know about her manners, her etiquettes, her eating manners, that how she is eating. She ate in such a manner as if there was a princess or who was eating. Well could she carry a morsel and well keep. So she held that morsel of bread in her hand in a very nice manner, that no drop fell upon her breast, that there was no stain, no drop of the soup or the morsel, it fell on her breast. In courtesy was set full muzzle her lest. So in courtesy she was, muzzle means full, much, her lest is her pleasure, so her pleasure was in her courtesy. Her overlip wiped, so she cleaned. She wiped her upper lip she cleaned her upper lip in a very nice manner, in a very stately manner. that in her copy there was no farthing seen. Farthing seen, the slightest sign of the of Greece. Of Greece, when she drunken had her draught, when she was taking her drink, there was not even the slightest of the grease found in her cup. Kope is the cup, farthing is the slightest, seen is the sign, grease is the modern English grease. When she drunken refers to the she was drinking, had her draught is the drink. Full seemly after her meat she wrought, that she took her food in a very nice manner. So all these are the courtly manners, and she is a prioress. Instead of focusing on her duties, on the services, on the things that are the requirements of her status, of her job, she is entrusted in such manners and etiquettes as if she is a princess. And secondly, she was of great despot. She was a source of diversion, full of fun, because she was not entrusted in her duties. Secretly means certainly, surely, and full pleasant and amiable of port. Port is mannered. She had the cultured and dignified manners, and she was very pleasant, and she pained her to counterfeit cheer, and she pained herself to imitate the manners of the court, and to be established of manner, and to be holden dine of reverence. Now reverence refers to the respect, dine is the dignity, to be holden, to get respect, to get the respect of the people who are around. Established of manner, established refers to the stately manners, the manners associated with the court, with the queens and kings and princes and prince and all those people. So she was entrusted in such manners. Counterfeit is to copy, is to imitate, is to model them. She pained herself. She took pains in imitating the courtly style, to copy the stately manners, so that everybody should give her dignity, respect, and basically she was using it as a weapon to attract others, so that people give her respect and honor. But for to speaken of her conscience, now that was her description, the way she carried herself, her dress, her name, her dress, the language that she spoke. Now, but for to speaken of her conscience, when we talk of her conscience, she was charitable and so pious. She would weep if that she saw a mouse caught in a trap, if it were dead or bleed. Now here Chaucer brings in humor. He discusses her conscience, her values, that he says that the prioress is so charitable, she is so concerned with the pities and with the sorrows of others, that she would weep if she saw a mouse, and if it were caught in a trap, or if it were dead, or if it is bleeding, she would start crying for that. She would start weeping for that mouse. So see, he brings in humor that this is her conscience, these are her moral values, that instead of her duties, instead of being helpful or pitiful to the people, she is not concerned with that. She is not concerned with the human beings. Of small hounds had she that she fed, of small hounds that she had small dogs, had she was having them, she fed with roasted flesh or milk or vestal bread. Vestal bread is a cake, is a sort of cake which is made of fine flour. So instead of being kind and courteous to the people, instead of helping people and feeling sorry for their pities and sorrow, and instead of trying to help them, she is involved in such type of things, that she would weep if the mouse is caught in a trap, or if it is bleeding, or if it is dead. She would start crying for that. And she has got small hounds, and she would feed those hounds upon the roasted meat, upon the milk and the cake of which is made up of fine flour. So these things are not available to ordinary people. So she is not concerned with the poor people, with the miseries and suffering of people. On the other hand, she is concerned with her own interests. And what is that interest? She is interested in giving good food to the animals that she is keeping. She is keeping pets, and she is interested in that only. So Sore wept she if one of them were dead. That she would definitely weep if one of those hounds was dead, and if men suit it with a yard smart. Since she had kept those, she would start crying if the men they would hit those hounds with they would smartly hit, they would hardly hit those hounds with a yard. She would start crying, and all was conscience and tender heart. So this was the condition of her conscience and of her soft and tender heart, that she had a very kind and sympathetic heart towards others. Full seemly her wimple pinched was. Wimple is the head cloth that these nuns wear. So her wimple was nicely worn. Her nose tratus. Tratus refers to the long and well shaped. So her nose was well shaped. Her eyes grey as glass. So her eyes were as bright as a glass, and they were grey. Her mouth full small. She had a small face, and there too soft and red. So it was soft and red. So again, there is irony in her, in the description of physical features also, that she was more concerned with her etiquettes, she was interested in the pets that she had kept, and moreover she was interested in her own personal features, and she took great care of herself. But secondly, she had a fair forehead. She had a broad forehead. Surely she had a broad forehead. It was almost a Spain brood, I trow. For hardly she was not undergrown. Full fattest was her cloak, as I was wore. So he describes that he continues with her appearance, that she had a broad forehead, and she was wearing an undergown also of small coral about her arm she bore. She was carrying a small coral, a pair of beads guarded all with green. So she was having around her arm she was having a pair of beads, and which was in the larger ones were in green colors, and thereon hang a brooch of gold full sheen. She was having a brooch also that was hanging on that, and it was shining full, on which there was first right a crowned A. This A and after Amor vincit omnia. Amor vincit omnia is a Latin term which means love conquers all. So she was wearing a brooch that contained A, the letter A. That meant because Amor means it is taken for the divine love. So that A represented the divine love. So she was wearing that A in her brooch, and that referred to Amor, the divine love. We can here see in all these things that she carries, that there is such a sharp contrast. The things that she is wearing, the oath she has taken, and the way she is carrying herself. She is wearing that A of Amor vincit omnia. Amor vincit omnia is a Latin term, that Latin expression that means love conquers all. And on the other hand, we do not find any instance of her sympathy, her support to any human being. Rather, she is interested in the courtly manners, in her own features, in her name, in the things that she is wearing. Another nun, and with her had she, that was her chaplain and priestess 3. So with the prioress, There was another nun also. She was her chaplain, she was her private secretary, and there was 3 priests also with her. And the description of the nun is not given. There is no description. We are just told that the prioress had a nun who was her private secretary, and the prioress had 3 other priests also with her. So we had in the lines from 118 to 164, we had the prioress's description, what type of a character she was, and her name, her manners, her nature. Finally, we came to know about her chaplain, that she had another nun also with her who was her chaplain, and we came to know about the 3 priests also who were with her. If we recap the lecture 3, we had a sort of introduction. The prologue to the Canterbury Tales provides a plan, a layout for the stories in the Canterbury Tales. It gives an introduction, it gives the description of the season, and it describes not only season, those similar qualities are reflected in the attitudes of human beings. And this is the reason that because of the energy and that vigor of the spring season, people, the pilgrims and the palmers, they undertake their mission, they undertake the journeys to different shrines, they undertake the pilgrimage. So this is the season of pilgrimage. After that, we had the description, we had the declaration by the host. He said that since people, the different pilgrims, they are taking rest so that they could start their journey early the next morning. He says that by the time they are ready, he had time and he can give the description of some of the characters. So he gave the description of the knight, who was a perfect character. He did not have any bad qualities. He describes his achievements. He had been to a number of places and he had won victory. He was victorious in all of them, and he has joined this pilgrimage, and he had recently arrived from a journey. Then we had the description of knight's son, who is a squire, and he is a trainee. He has also been to some of the places. He wants to excel he wants to bring glory to himself by in the field of chivalry and knighthood. He wants to do the deeds of bravery. The knight had his son, the squire, with him, and a yeoman also. Now this yeoman was the servant. He was a landowner who was under the control of the knight. He was a simple man. He did his duty. We had a small description of the yeoman, and he was dressed the way a yeoman should be dressed. Finally, we had the description of the prioress. This is the first character of the church. We are introduced here, and from her name, the character and the kind of attitude she had towards different things, and the way she spoke and the way she behaved, it shows her character. It shows that how much religious people were in Chaucer's times. Prioress, first of all, her name, it was very much evident of her character, that she had a very fashionable name and she belonged to some field which was totally different from that. Moreover, her manners, she gave much attention to the manners, because she tried to copy the courtly manners and she ate like a princess. Then her conscience and her attitude towards the animals, she showed sympathy to the wild animals, she showed sympathy to the pets, but she did not show any kind of emotions to the sufferings and miseries to human beings. So this is the condition, and we in the next lecture we will have some other characters also, and we'll analyze their characters and their achievements, and whether they are the perfect characters or they have certain drawbacks in their personalities. Allah Hafiz.